As founder and CEO of the world's most valuable edtech company, Byju Raveendran is a household name in edtech circles. A trained engineer, he started teaching in 2008, or perhaps even before, and he realized he had a bit of a knack for it, eventually filling stadiums with people who wanted to learn math. In 2011, he founded Think and Learn, his company, and in 2015, he launched the Learning app, which has now been downloaded 64 million times and has 4.2 million paid subscribers. Byju builds itself a comprehensive and personalized learning platform with a tutoring platform, a learning app, and an early years app. He's reportedly raised over $2 billion, and his investors are a who's who of venture capital, including Sequoia, Tencent, Chan Zuckerberg, and most recently, Mary Meeker and Bond Capital. That round had Byju valued at more than 10 billion, making it a decacorn, which was a word I did not even know existed. He's described himself as an entrepreneur by chance, a teacher by choice, and has said he learned more on the playground than he did in the classroom, which I imagine delights his parents, who are both teachers. Byju, welcome. It's such a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, and same here.
I want to get started by talking about the past 6 months, because what a past 6 months it's been. As I said, you have a tutoring platform, a learning app, and an early years app. When school shut down, what did Byju's do?
Yeah, mid-March when the lockdown started in India, being like a leading online platform, we immediately went free with all our programs, helped a lot of students to start learning online, and still most of what is there in the learning app, we have been able to keep it free, thereby obviously helping a lot of students to at least reduce the learning loss, which is expected to happen for still the unfortunate thing is one thing which even we have not been able to solve is India is a country where there's a clear digital divide. There's almost 1/3 of the students don't even have access to a smartphone. Unfortunately, they will have to catch up on the other side of the crisis.
Right. So you've made your content free. Is it still free today?
Yeah. So we went free with all our programs. It's still there's a lot of programs we have been able to keep it free, keeping in mind the current scenario of literally all students sitting at home and trying out online learning, and we have been able to, without compromising on our monetization model. Just to give you call out one number, before the crisis, we were at in the first 4.5 years since we launched our learning app in India, we have been able to get just about 40 million students to try out our learning app or on the free platform. But in the next 5 months, we have added more than 25 million students on the platform. So eventually it took a crisis for most of the stakeholders to realize how good online learning can be. And slowly but surely, everybody is realizing that. By no means I'm mentioning that it's going to be 100% online on the other side of the crisis, but a lot of things, a lot of good things will stay and continue being online. Just like I'm sure most of us will continue meeting online like this. Good number of us are realizing how productive this can be. I'm sure the best of online and offline is going to converge on the other side of the crisis. That's the positive thing about and obviously it's fortunate to be in a sector which is of positive relevance during a crisis like this. That's a huge responsibility, and we're still trying our best to do to help more students learn online.
This will be anecdotal because I don't think we quite yet have data on it, but how do you think parents' perception of online learning was affected in this moment? Because on the one hand, we're also relieved to have these tools. On the other hand, I think many parents desperately miss teachers and human contact. So what is your perception of kind of, you've been in the front line of it, how have parents reacted to this?
Yeah, so the schools, if you're talking about schools, as soon as the schools reopen, parents would want their kids to rush back to school, because schools are not just about math and science learning, right? Schools, at least schools which we remember, is a lot about the corridor time and the playground time, as well as all the life skills which we learn in, kids learn all their life skills in schools, right? Most of their life skills in school. So we are all waiting forward to the time where schools will go back to the normal days. But one thing which will happen is that a lot of students also are realizing that there are things which can be done better online. So it's a blended approach. is what you hopefully we'll all see on the other side of the crisis. So there is no substitute for what you learn by being in a group, buying inside a classroom. So whatever like we are doing now is very much complementary to what can possibly happen inside a classroom, but it's never a substitute. Is online learning of these subjects is not a substitute for school, because as I mentioned, school is not about learning these curricular subjects, right? So there is so much more to school, and that can never be completely moved online.
Talk to me a little bit about, you just alluded to the fact that you're still able to stay focused on your monetization model while offering this free content. How do you balance that? Because a lot of ed tech companies have done this. They've sort of opened the gates. But if you are, a for-profit company and you do have investors, they have targets. So how will you close that spigot that you've opened? And how are you thinking about that from a business standpoint?
Yeah, we've always found that right balance between uh, like figuring out a model which is sustainable. For like, we obviously have a for-profit model which is helping, which is created for, I'll say, the top 45 percentage of the student population in India. But we are also mindful of the fact that the other 55 percentage, and we are consistently or continuously thinking about how we can make an impact on that 55 or 60% of the students, out of which half of them today they don't even have access to a screen in India, right? So I come from that kind of in school. I come from a government school from a small village in a southern state in India called Kerala. So I am someone who has faced all these challenges firsthand. Now, when I say challenges, like I would want to call out that in countries like India, it's not just about finding good teachers in a classroom. A lot of times, finding teachers inside itself as a classroom is a challenge. Especially once you move out of the cities and towns. So, can we solve these challenges around access to good quality teachers and education or good quality content? Can we personalize what we do inside a classroom? Can we make sure that students learn because they want to learn and not because they're forced to learn out of fear of exams? Now, these are all big challenges which are impossible to solve in a large population country like in India, in the physical world. Today, everybody is talking about the digital divide, but the inequities which exist in the physical world is so much more glaring, and to build. Now, how will you solve that, right? You can't build more and more schools and get more and more teachers inside those classrooms. In fact, since there are so many other high paying job options available, it's been a struggle to attract good quality graduates back to teaching. So these are all big challenges in our small way we are trying to solve. These are very early days, but by no means I'll call it success. It's at best, though you mentioned that one of the most valuable tech companies as an introduction in the beginning. It's just relative success. There's a long way to go before we'll call it a success. So to answer your question around, so what is required is like to solve the challenges around access as well as efficiency. Technology can be used as an enabler, and that's what most of the stakeholders are slowly but surely realizing. Though unfortunately, it took a crisis for a lot of people to even try out. So teachers are adapting to the new model. Institutions are trying to go online and trying their best to go online. Some of at least the courses which can be delivered effectively online. And students, we've always found it easy to actually change the way they learn. So that's why we've always got the best response from students. And uh, our strategy of keeping it student centric while creating the product as well as while devising the go to market strategy has clearly worked.
Okay, but just to go back to the free question, how long does it remain free?
So most of the content which is what we have kept inside the app is free, and there are a lot of other premium offerings which is on top, and that's how we convert a certain percentage of the free users are the ones who are getting, those who can afford to pay for it, and those who really need that continuous usage are the ones who are paying for it. So we've been able to find that right balance between keeping it free for students who want to kind of use it more like a reference material as well as a strong learning companion tool during the crisis. Now, long term, now obviously short term, maybe we are compromising a little bit on the monetization side by keeping a lot of things free. But mid to long term, this is really good for the sector, as online learning is, at least for kids when they learn at home, is going to become mainstream. And that was always our challenge in the last 5 years. Our biggest challenge was, how do you create a segment where students start learning on from a screen and on their own. So it's more than learning from a screen. How do you create active learners? If you ask me, that's been our core attempt has been to create active learners, those who learn because of the love of learning. And that's our message. Our message has been, we'll make kids fall in love with learning. And how we have done that is by finding that right balance between engagement and effectiveness. I normally use the word, we have got that right amount of chocolate coating before we take them through the broccoli. So, and it's a big challenge to get it right across multiple age groups. I believe we have done a fairly good job of finding that balance right.
Chocolate covered broccoli. Now that's an image that's going to stick with me for a while. I mean, you've just alluded to something that I think is important for those looking at the business model of Byju's, which is you're a supplement to learning. You're selling directly to parents and to students, and you're trying to create this sort of love of learning in the students themselves. Do you want to get into the business of changing what's happening in the classrooms? Do you envision a B2B model to schools and to sort of education ministry, or will you continue direct to consumer?
So what we've seen is, and it's out of all the stakeholders involved in education, the biggest beneficiary, students, has to be at the center of everything, right? And that's where uh, a B2C will continue to be our core area of focus. Though there is, if you are asking about, there's a huge opportunity around helping teachers to teach better, creating tools for them, because a lot of the tools which teachers use today are not necessarily created for teaching, right? Uh, so there is an opportunity, like, for multiple startups to be in that space, opportunity where teachers, you enable teachers to become better teachers online. Because I believe two types of business models will evolve over the next few years. And what would have taken many more years, maybe it got its real acceleration because of the current crisis. On one side, you will see few large companies creating these high quality content offered through platforms which will personalize the way it's delivered to the student, based on, not necessarily based on what they like, but more importantly based on their proficiency level. And on the other side, you will also see that there is an opportunity around a business model where a long tail of millions of teachers helping students learn wherever, like, and the best part about that is now people are realizing that your geographic location doesn't matter. So these teachers can come from any part of the world and helping a lot of other especially those students who require personal attention. And there are some subjects and there are some age groups where that one-on-one personalization can make a big difference. Now this still cannot replace our traditional schools, but this can really complement students to become better learners, nudging them towards active learning, and more taking the role of a mentor, facilitating and guiding them and motivating them to learn right. And leaving, now why it's important that I've already used this word active learning many times. That's actually the requirement of tomorrow, because most of the jobs which today's kids will get into, they're not even defined. So how will you get them ready for the jobs of the unforeseen jobs of the future, right? You can only do that if you can enable them to become active learners. Because as I always tell, the 21st century illiterates are not the ones who can't read and write, they are the ones who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. So it's very important that we teach kids the skill of learning how to learn. Not everything, at least the things which they like, because generally if they pursue what they like, they will become good at it. You'll always find a good interest. If you observe any successful anyone who's successful, you will find like one thing common, that they would have pursued something which they liked and something which they are good at. There'll be a huge overlap between these two. So that's our aim, if you ask me. It's like and now while doing that, obviously we have to do these things within the framework of the curriculum, because uh, so that it'll also help them in schools, and in something which we have kept in mind, the curricular skills. Recently we have also started focusing on co-curricular skills. There's also an opportunity around uh, making sure that kids have these life skills, co-curricular skills, future skills. So we have just added like inorganically, we just added a company who's into this live one-on-one coding, and we are seeing and both these models are very complementary. Ours is an asynchronous personalized format. What we've got is a live synchronous format, and in a way in future, and like maybe it'll take few years, These are the two models which you will see evolving and becoming really big.
So you're going to continue aiming directly for the student, but you're going to
Yes.
broaden what you offer them. So you're broadening them the K-12 curriculum, also the early years curriculum. You're going to build the tutoring, which is that one-to-one learning, which we know is so incredibly powerful. But you're not getting into the classroom. And it sounds like, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly, you're not doing the teacher training model that you said is obviously a huge opportunity for somebody, but that's not where you're focusing. And so you're really broadening what you can teach directly to the student through the platforms that you're building and through the acquisitions you're making.
That's right. Yeah.
What else did you all learn about yourselves and your users, your students in lockdown? I mean, this was this kind of tremendous experiment that nobody wanted, but has provided some pretty rich data. Can you just reflect a little bit on what you as a company learned and what you learned about students and how you'll apply that to building the company moving forward?
Yeah. One thing which we have learned in the initial days itself is that contrary to what a lot of people think, teaching through a screen or when kids are on the other side, if you get the formats right, if you create those engaging formats, it's actually easy to get the attention of a student. If you keep the younger kids, you need to keep the group very small, 1 to 5, 1 to 6. If you try doing a 1 to 100 with a 1 to 100 kind of a session for a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, it's impossible to hold on to their attention. But if the groups are small in a live synchronous format, for younger age group kids, that really works, because it's almost like every student has a friend row seat. And I see, when, because I also observe how I have a 6-year-old son, how he's attending the classes. So it's amazing to see that in the online medium is actually like leveling the playing field. Otherwise, though, like we always talk about teachers should like kind of moderate the class, and it's generally spoon feeding is what typically happens in a classroom. And unfortunately now this format allows, because everybody has the same like screen size available on like in a 1 to 6, 1 to 10 format. So students actually participate very well compared to, if you observe how offline classrooms are like running in, like if you've been observing, especially I'm talking about purely in the India context. Here students are becoming like they're participating in the class, which is a good thing, though there is a lot to be done in terms of how like technology can make it easy for teachers to do this. Because a lot of times it, like in initial days, it was actually a struggle for teachers to even figure out how to create PPTs and how to go online. But I'm sure over the last 5-6 months they are doing a fantastic job of adapting to, because there's no other choice. Now there might be a limited number of teachers, institutions also are just looking at online learning as a crisis management tool, but other than that, otherwise they have adapted well. And though curating content, it's been a challenge, because there's no one place where they can get actually all of what they want. But teachers generally have adapted well, and like with 5-6 months into the crisis. But so initial days it was a huge struggle for them, but now they are doing a much better job. And from kids perspective, it is uh, like younger kids, it's still a lot of hands-on learning is important for grade 5, grade possibly grade 1 to 3, 1 to 4. High school kids, middle school, high school kids, uh, they are still fine, even a slightly larger like one to many format.
Right. So you've always said that you learned more in the playground than you did in the classroom, and that kids can learn a lot from sport. You're an avid sports person. I think you are. You play 6 sports. Is the secret to, I mean, to people who are building their own companies, is the secret to building an effective learning company Playful Learning? Is it, you've been alluding to this throughout, and I want you to kind of just hit it on the head. Is it just make it engaging and make it fun, and kids will sort of be drawn to it and attracted to it? Is that the secret?
Yeah, generally, like not just any subjects, right? If for most of us in those early days, our favorite subject will be closely related to our favorite teacher, right? Because we like a teacher, we like the subject. It's not, most of the times it's not the other way around. Now that's true for almost everything, right? You like something, that's when you will put more effort, and you'll continue becoming better at it, right? And especially if you are in that game of you versus you, and if you are pursuing that continuous improvement, there's only one way. Now what games or most of these co-curricular activities teach kids is the, and like some of us forget that fact, unfortunately, is the there's a lot more to learn outside a classroom than inside a classroom. Whether how to play in a team, how to lead a team, how to have that killer instinct, how to perform under pressure. Now these are things, and again, if you are playing those games for fun, now if you are like if you're spoon feeding those games, if you are sending a 5-year-old to a coaching camp or a summer camp and like forcing them to play a game, that's not that's again that defeats the purpose. But otherwise, if you are doing it for fun, whether it's playing a game, whether it's taking an exam, or whether it's doing business, you can do that for like for a lifetime. And that's why for me it's been a clear case scenario of pursuing my passion around learning math and teaching math, which ended up becoming business, as you mentioned. So, and we are still in that continuous pursuit of how to make it bigger, more importantly, better. And I believe what differentiates great companies from good companies, and we are obviously we are a good company today, is if you can be in the game for multiple decades. And just like in politics and business, it's more about being in the game and not, there's nothing called winning the game.
To continue,
That's
well,
someone
or
to
you
be
have to
on.
continue winning the game, right? So something interesting that you're just saying, and this is something I think has come out of COVID, is this idea of kind of using online tools to create as many opportunities for kids to see things that they might love. So OutSchool in the US is another company that's doing this, right? So
Yes.
find some more opportunities. You're in the curriculum, of course, the Indian curriculum, but you're also saying that you want to build the co-curricular. So creating opportunities for kids to find the thing that they love. Do you think you can do that as effectively online? Can you find and fall in love with that teacher online the way you do in a classroom, the way you just mentioned?
Yeah, there are skills which can be taught better online. Now what I've seen, and like in there are so many courses which, like if you want to teach piano to a kid, right, and a teacher, it's actually better if you do it online, because if there is you can focus on the keyboard and what the kids are doing, and you can focus the camera to the keyboard, and you actually can teach better. Now in a classroom, though people think that when you sit in a classroom compared to a one-to-one screen like this, uh, the chances of you getting distracted is much higher. It's that's why I was telling that, contrary to what people think, it's easier to hold on to the attention of especially next generation kids, because uh, and provided you can do things in the form, if you create content in a format which they like, offered through devices which they are very friendly with, right? They're digital natives. It's just so comfortable, uh, like interacting with the screen, playing with the screen, learning. And once you kind of blend that playing with the screen and learning from a screen, if you can find that right balance, it's actually a better medium. Now everything can't be taught online. That's why all these hard skills, like which can be objectively taught, whether it's math, most of the STEM subjects, in fact, math, science, coding, and a lot of co-curricular stuff. Now it's important to build tools specifically for that. Now if you're just using let's say Zoom to teach like this, it doesn't like over there, it'll only be a meeting. Like whether it's important to create tools which will enable teachers to become better online,
Right.
which will give them the power of visual learning, because screen can also be used in a way which makes it very interactive, right? If you are doing it through a smartphone or a tablet, that gives you the power of interaction. And every interaction, the best part about online learning is the fact that you have data on what they've been doing before, what they've
Right.
done in the previous years, so you can actually personalize it in a much better way. Though engagement is only like the leading indicator, that's only the first part of it. But you can create effectiveness because you get an idea about what the students have been doing, which even if you are teaching one-on-one in the offline world, it's very difficult for teachers to keep a track of what the students have been doing, even in last week's class. Forget about last year's or 2 years before classes, right? So the power of the data and how you would utilize that data to make it meaning to help to personalize it for the student is like can only be done online. So but again, as I mentioned, there are obviously you can't teach kids how to play football, right? That you have to go outside and you have to learn by playing it. Now one thing which you have seen is, and that's where like most of our classroom learning, for the first time in 100 years maybe our classrooms are changing, right? Previously, it was only learn by listening and learn by reading. We have never explored the opportunity around learn by seeing, learn by playing, learn by doing. That's where all these technology tools gives enables teachers to become very, very powerful when you do it online.
So that seems like the perfect moment to ask you the question: is this a sort of transformational, pivotal moment? Is COVID going to change things for good, or will we just go back to the way things were?
I'm very sure, I'm very optimistic that it's not going to go back to 100% offline, because everybody is realizing that any teacher who's trying out online teaching today, I'm sure some part of what they do on the other side of the crisis is going to remain online, because and since if it was only for a few weeks, maybe they wouldn't have put that effort, they wouldn't have invested their time in figuring out how to teach better online. Today all good teachers have invested a lot and they've figured out. So what you will see on the other side of the crisis is actually a blended model of uh, the as I mentioned, the things which good things which can be done online, and with a mix of online and offline is what I'm hoping. And I'm sure now what will be the how much of it will remain online is yet to be seen. And you will also see a good mix of uh, synchronous learning which happens in a classroom, and that's more like for students it's still passive learning, and the asynchronous learning which they will do when they are at home, right? A mix of this, so it's never about asynchronous versus synchronous. A good mix of both it's required. Teachers should do the job of generating the interest in a certain topic to the student, and they should pursue that when they go back home, right? Because like all of us learn even after once we come out of schools, right? In fact, what before joining school and after leaving school is what we have learned a lot more things, because we do it based on what we wanted to do, right? And not necessarily within the constraint of an exam or a curriculum.
So it's almost a coaching model where the teacher gets you psyched up, teaches you the skills, gives you some basics, and then you go home and you really practice it. So let me just focus a little bit on the company and its strategy. You have obviously raised a ton of cash and spending a lot of cash. You've few acquisitions, including Osmo in the US, White Hat Junior, the coding platform you talked about. You're also sponsoring the Indian men's cricket team. What investments are you looking to make beyond sports sponsorships? And what is the international expansion strategy? I ask you this because when I told my husband I was interviewing you, he said, "Can we download that app here?"
So yeah, I'll start with your first question. So I agree, we have raised a lot of primary capital, but we've been very capital efficient in terms of how we have built our core business model in India. Not just the product, but also the how we have created the brand awareness. More importantly, segment awareness. As I mentioned before us, students were not used to learning from a screen, or at least they were using screen as or online. They were going online just to for use something as a reference material, but not as their mainstream learning tool when they learn at home. So that's one thing which we have done, and we have created a we have been able to again find that right balance between high growth and sustainable growth. We have created a profitable model in India. We are like the current year we are looking to close anywhere between 1 to 1 billion in revenue with 150 million profit. Now, just to add on to that, since you mentioned about raising a lot of capital, it's mostly been a case of adding good partners rather than raising capital. We've been able to get a diverse set of partners who have always helped us to grow in now new markets, especially English speaking markets. These are early days for us. We're just but we're not starting from zero. Osmo, uh, which is a Palo Alto based company, brings us one more strong format around hands-on learning. As I mentioned, that hands-on learning is critical for younger kids. And apart from the movie-like videos and the game-like interactions which were built over the last many years, and a platform which personalizes it's based on based on the proficiency level of the student. The opportunity around international expansion is the way I see it today is that it's clearly an inflection point for the sector. There's opportunity around almost everything in education. Now, again, just because of that, we don't want to lose focus on our. We are focused on kids. We are focused on school age group, school going students. Curricular, we have just started adding co-curricular stuff. With White Hat Junior, uh, we acquired White Hat Junior because it fits into two pillars, two out of the three pillars which we've always kept, and like adding more subjects, more grades, and into more markets. So White Hat Junior will accelerate our international expansion. Two third of their already 200 million run rate. Two-third of that revenue is actually coming from outside India. There's an opportunity around by uh, creating high quality, high paying teaching jobs in India, just like how India has provided a lot of software engineers for the world. I strongly believe that there's an opportunity to create like hundreds of thousands of teachers or teaching jobs in India by I believe the golden age of teaching is going to come back sooner than later, because today anybody can become a teacher, right? You like something, you want to teach, you can just go online, you can start teaching. So that's a big opportunity. We are very promising. Again, by no means I'm telling that it's like very promising from a business model point of view. So a combination of asynchronous model which we have in India and a synchronous live model. Over there, it's not just the cost arbitrage, but also the quality arbitrage of teachers in India and students outside India. That's the model which is already scaling nicely. And if it's around coding and math and the other subjects, we have not yet figured out, but we strongly believe in some like I strongly believe in holistic learning. So we'll still figure out. Not for the sake of creating online courses, but the courses which we believe can do a better job in terms of effectiveness. We will start launching them, and that's where you will also see us acquiring like one or two more companies in the next few months. We've just started exploring, which will fit into this strategy of English speaking markets and co-curricular co-curricular subjects, where someone who's already built a good product, which if it can add value to our existing user base, or it's something which can open up a new market for us, is where. And we have used most of the primary capital for acquisitions actually. So the core model doesn't require any more capital.
So more subjects, more grades, and more markets. Are there any markets in particular that you're eyeing? You said English speaking, but that's still a pretty big umbrella.
Yeah,
What within that?
so it's naturally US and US, UK, and other like smaller Australia, New Zealand. So we've already launched some of our products over there. Uh, but US is going to be like if we do things well over the next few months, it can be a big market for us.
And do you see? You've mentioned two kind of very different models. Obviously, the synchronous asynchronous model. That you've got your tutoring platform, you have your learning app. Where do you see the most growth between those two?
So in India, we are our like all of what we have seen till now is based on our asynchronous model, because that is where uh, we are able to personalize, and over there we are able to scale the model in almost like we've been growing at 100% year on year for the last 5 years, and that is just getting accelerated further. That growth is getting accelerated. So India asynchronous model will continue being our growth driver, though synchronous models also just started scaling. In outside India, we believe synchronous models will be the growth drivers. So live one-on-one models where we build, and that where we'll scale the White Hat Junior model. We'll add more subjects into that models very soon.
And I love this idea of the golden age of teaching. So you believe we're entering another golden age of teaching because anybody can become a teacher online and can teach what they want to teach. They don't have to tuck themselves into someone's curriculum. They can teach something. And because we're building these self-initiated learners out there in the world, they will access that content. It's a very interesting prediction. I actually very much hope it becomes true. What
And
else?
it's very much for something which creates such a big impact, because I'm sure we all remember the one or two of those teachers who made a big impact in our lives.
What
It's
about
it's
you?
it's
Who's
very
your
very
favorite teacher?
underappreciated. It's very much underappreciated, and then if you see if you just look around the education systems which are doing well, most of them are countries where they're able to attract best of the graduates back into teaching, right? And that's been a struggle in countries like ours, where in fact in the last 20 years it is actually situation has actually worsened, because there are so many other better job paying options in the services industry or in the tech services industry, and it's become tougher to find good teachers in our villages and towns today.
Well, in a way, couldn't what you're talking about actually making the teacher shortage worse, right? So if we have VIP kids in China, tons of American teachers are now working for them rather than teaching in the US school system. Same thing, if they can come teach for you on a private tutoring platform, make more money, have more flexibility, potentially, doesn't that make the teacher, make it less appealing even to become a teacher in the classroom?
So like the challenge over there is today, like almost all teachers on the White Hat Junior platform, they have not been teachers before. We are converting a lot of engineers, and in India, you can say that are like by giving this opportunity and flexibility to teach from home. It's like one more thing which I'll happily say is that it's 100% women teachers, and one more number, and which I've read somewhere, is that in India there are more than 50% of the graduates are women, but only 23% of them are in the workforce. So there is a large talent pool sitting at home, and where the like and not contributing anything. We are actually giving them an opportunity for them to come online and start teaching. And I'm talking about significant numbers here. They already have 7,000 teachers, all created in the last like 8-9 months. And the opportunity over there is, when we have, I'm not using the word if we have, when we have 1 million students on that platform, we would have created 50,000, 60,000 high quality teaching jobs. We would have convinced 50,000, 60,000 graduates to get into teaching, right? So that's an opportunity which is untapped. So
two very easy. My daughters asked that I ask the following two questions, and I do everything they say, of course. One is, who was your favorite teacher? And two is, did you ever imagine you would be this successful?
I still don't believe I'm successful, because I think my this thing is that the day you think you are successful, the game is over. Like what keeps me sleepless at night is the fact that there's a lot to be done. You almost feel that you sleep 2 hours more, and you miss an opportunity. And so yeah, the day I will it's always been keeping an aspiration which you think you can never reach, and when you're about to reach there, raise the bar again, so that there is no scope for complacency. That's the answer for the second question. On the first question now, yeah, there have been many teachers in especially in those initial years, those whom I remember very fondly, and both my parents are teachers. They never taught me any subjects. Obviously, I believe they have taught me very important life skills in terms of pursuing your dreams. They've never it's tough to become an entrepreneur in India from the kind of background where I come from. It's more like it's mostly been the encouragement given by them. In terms, I normally say that if I can be half as good as my dad as a father, I'm sure I'll still be a good father. So I try following that, giving kids the freedom in terms of to pursue what they really like, rather than forcing something upon them. Which I'm not sure whether you really understand what I mean here, but in India, it's been it's spoon feeding, and it's not. So we literally kill their creativity and curiosity. All of us are born curious, right? But somewhere, because of it's still unfortunately learning driven by fear of exams and not love for learning. So
no, it's very powerful. This is, I do think you've presented that this is a moment where that could potentially change. We're creating more, as I said, entry points for kids to find their passions and find their interests. But as long as those exams exist, those will remain paramount for teachers. For students, and of course for parents. I just want to end on one.
I just wanted to add one more, and I believe this also gives an opportunity, because generally the challenge for let's say someone who's teaching not a mainstream skill but something else is, it's in the offline world, it's always a challenge for them to find enough students in the vicinity for them to actually pursue that as their career option. Today they have an option because they can teach to kids wherever uh, finding enough demand, and if you're talking about niche skills, it's impossible to find enough demand in the vicinity. And that's where the model which you mentioned, Outschool, what they follow is creating a lot of teaching jobs, even in the not necessarily in the mainstream, but things which are considered niche, right? So there's an opportunity for us to actually get online and start teaching things which we like, not just math and science.
I want to end on a subject that we touched on at the beginning, but we really didn't hit on, which is inequity. COVID has shed a very bright light on these inequities. In India, obviously, the connectivity issue has been tremendous, and remains to be. What do you see your role in trying to mitigate those inequalities versus really helping those who can afford your product and get out there? Like, what are some just one or two tangible things you can do that could that you use that power and responsibility you've acquired with this company to address that? What do you see your role as?
Yeah, there are two initiatives which we have just started doing. One is around uh, to help teachers teach online. We are exploring options where we are thinking of actually creating something for teachers, not for monetization, but as a support to teachers on the to solve the challenge around infrastructure, digital infrastructure. Obviously, it's not an easy task, but I still am very hopeful that over the next 3-4 years, most of the kids will have access to a screen, and that's the only way you can solve these main challenges which I mentioned in during the session at scale. So there's huge amount of internet, like over the last 5 years, like from today more than 70% of the students have access to a smartphone. That itself is a big thing, and most of it has happened in the last 5 years. I think in the next 4-5 years, almost all of them will have access to one, and that's where you can solve the challenge around access. But more important, on the other side, we're also figuring out how we can do something through schools and government. But it's going to be it's still going to be will take 4-5 years for us to make sure that every student will have access to some kind of learning, right? And though, like, hopeful that the only way you can solve is by using technology as an enabler. And
So we've got
yeah, because at the end of the day, this is like I will if you ask me what is that I want to do, it's like we will always have a strong for profit model which will be targeted at the top 40-45% of the student population, those who can afford to pay for it. But if we can do like, aim is to do something for the other half, and especially like someone who has come from that kind of a background, gone to a government school, and in fact a non-English medium school, the average English which you were forced to listen over the last half an hour is what I've learned by listening to sports commentary on radio. So there's a strong intent to make it work, because at the end of the day, this is one of those few sectors where you do good, you will end up doing well, or vice versa, you do well, you will end up doing good. Because the real fun is not actually not in creating this multi-billion-dollar company. It's actually changing the way millions think and learn. But a long way to go.
So I just want to sum up quickly. Your goal is to create active learners everywhere. Curious. We're not going to stamp out the curiosity that kids are born with, which so often happens in schools. And I know that in India, with rote learning and with these very, very high stakes exams, it's a major issue. We're potentially entering a golden age of teaching. Anybody can become a teacher online, and that can be exciting. And tech enabled to be able to address these equity gaps, we need to use technology, and we need to broaden that. That's obviously going to require some access. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up? Because
the last one is lot more efficient and very, very cost effective, right? That's the reason why we need to like move to tech enabled education rather than building more schools and trying to get teachers into our classrooms. Right. You summarized it well, actually. So thank you.
Fantastic. It's been so much fun talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.